Welcome to the Digging Deeper podcast. My name is Lindy, and I'm so nervous because Matt is here and he asked me to host.
Pressure's on.
I'm all good. Thank you for asking me, Matt.
Hey, I'm super excited.
To be in your presence.
Well, I don't know about that part, but I'm excited that you're hosting today.
Thank you. But no, seriously, I'm very excited to dig into this week's topic and your amazing sermon. So much to unpack, but before we start that, let's go around the room and see how everyone's doing.
Love it.
Tov.
Tov.
She never calls me this.
No, I never do.
I don't know who you're talking
Toby's too long, so it's
Really?
short.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Especially when she's angry, yeah.
Yep.
I'm doing good. I had to fill in more immigration forms, and that it really brings out the best in me.
It really
Entering the
doesn't.
same thing for the 4 millionth time, but it's all good. It's good. Furthermore, very good. Just had an incredible Sunday worshiping with our congregation, and happy, man.
Awesome.
Busy, good. Lindy, everybody, let's go. I'm distracted.
You're doing great. I know what kind of podcast this is going to be, and I'm very excited.
It's very bad. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's good to be back. We were away last week in El Salvador with our missions team, and it was just absolutely amazing to be able to go down to New Life Sanctuary, which is one of our missions partners, our overseas mission partners, and just be able to both be a blessing, which was the intent, but then just be blessed like crazy while we're there, because the people there are so amazing. And it's so cool. You can go all the way around the world and have different language barriers and cultural barriers, but that unified heartbeat for lost people and for Christ is very evident there, like it is here. And so that was just such a neat thing. It kind of transcends culture. So, but all to say, it is also very nice to be home.
Yeah.
I missed worshiping with you guys on the Sunday that we weren't here. So I said it on Sunday, but man, it was so good to be back. So
Also, did you Sabbath?
well, I was there. I didn't actually. So that was a funny
question.
part. I had to do it when I got back. We worked all 7 days, so it was crazy. Yeah. It was a intentionally a busy time, but it was good. So
Yeah, I think it was PT or Nate. Someone mentioned yesterday in our meeting just about the Showblats and meeting the child that they were sponsoring, and that they did all of this work for them, or they did songs or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got super teary eyed because I was like, wow, that sounds incredible to be able to see what you're sowing into, right?
Absolutely.
It sounded amazing.
Yeah,
Thanks for doing that.
It was good. No, absolutely. I'm excited. Hopefully we get to go back sometime soon. So
That's awesome, man. Nathaniel, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I'm fantastic.
You look
I
very
just
rested.
Came out of an entire hour-long meeting with lawyers.
man.
It's so funny. I could meet with people and counsel them through like tough stuff, and talking faith and coaching, and I just leave so excited, like I'm energized. And 1 hour with lawyers, and I'm both broke financially and emotionally. But
Know the feeling. Know it well.
Yeah, no, I'm doing great. Like, man, the testimonies on Sunday are just a reminder for me. Like Thursday night service, I remember doing it and then bribing people with pizza and going like, we got to do something in the pandemic. We got to get people to church, and what can we do? And,
That's right.
Yeah.
And just to hear like years later, the fruit, because we did something, just really encouraged me to keep going. Like, what next thing is God calling us to do? That might seem silly.
Yeah.
It might include more pizza, but they're going to see the fruit from it. So I was encouraged by that big time.
That's so good.
It's amazing.
Lindy, how are you doing?
I am fantastic.
Awesome.
I just said to Toby, it's so funny because when we do like accountability and stuff, I'm like, I freak out about the immigration stuff, and he's all like, I'm so cool, God's got this. And then I go, no, I know you do trust the Lord, but
That's right.
This is where your frustration with the stuff comes.
Do one more form.
Yes, he gets.
That's fair.
I'm out of here.
It's really, and I get it, but it's one of those things where it's like, again, I think Nate, like we had a good discussion on this, where it's like, God, it's in your hands, but what do I have to do still?
That's right.
And am I missing something? So it's just going over this thing for the millionth time and just going like, did we do everything? Is there something we're missing? And it's just a season that we're both looking forward to be over. And so like, it will be amazing if everyone could just pray for us that this season, that things will, because we go, it's God's time.
Yes.
And it's his money. And I would love and I feel like we have a few situations like this with our church, right? It's God, it's your time. And so
I just keep on praying, God, please don't let me wait 40 years before I go into the promised land.
Yes.
I'm kind of here already now.
Going,
Please
okay.
get the paperwork.
You're looking at the Israelites and going, they're so impatient. But then you go, well, okay, maybe, Lord, I'm sorry.
Perspective, right?
But we're talking about a different commandment today.
We are.
Number 4, which is thou shalt not murder. Am I wrong? Oh, sorry. You're
we can talk about that
regretting
one too.
asking me to host.
That's good.
No. In all seriously, Matt, amazing sermon. I always go like when I walk out of there and I go, oh, okay, Lord, super convicted, which is such a good thing for me. But remember to keep the Sabbath day. Remember to keep it holy. What a lot I think there is to unpack in this message of yours, and I'm excited to do it. You mentioned that you were talking about how rest is a spiritual discipline, and then you said that Sabbath is like tithing, giving the first fruits of our time to God.
Yeah.
I was like, that's good. Let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start it out, and then I want you guys to jump in on this. But I, as all of you know from preaching, you wish you had like another 20 minutes to unpack these things when you get into them. But the piece in there that I think is a bit of a mind shift for all of us is, with tithing, we always encourage people and tell people, when you're figuring out budgets, the tithe isn't at the end of your budget. It's the beginning of your budget. And then everything comes out of that and you work around it. And with that statement, the idea was we need to treat time the same way. Like we need to actually start our calendar week with our Sabbath and then plan everything else around it. Because
so good.
The pushback I always hear is, well, we've got so many things doing this, and we got to do that, and we got to do this. And I'm like, yeah, but if you just flipped the calendar, and I know that's easier to say than do, but it's the practical reality. Like if we just start with
Same
Sunday,
as tithing, you're right.
It is, yeah. And then from there, whatever day of the week your Sabbath is, and then plan out around that. It's the promise Matthew 6:33 that seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these other things will be added. If we just prioritize properly, I think we'd be surprised at how God actually works it out for us. But I don't know. I'd love for you guys to jump on that too.
Yeah, the thing is, just jump to my mind immediately hearing that as well. We always say time is money.
Yeah.
We say that constantly, and you go, okay, that's true. Then you should be tithing on that too.
That's right. Yeah.
That's pretty easy. And the other part of it is like the reason we tithe is to show God that I'm trusting all my finances to you. Like I'm giving it over. But why do we struggle to do that with our time? Going, no, I'm giving my time over to you, God. It's very good. It's a good thing you pointed out there.
That's good, man.
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah, you schedule important things.
You do.
You don't put your chemo treatment. I'll try to remember that.
Yeah, that's right.
You put it in the calendar, and our calendars, most of our calendars, I don't think reflect the need for rest and our values. And so, checking your calendar is just a good check to see, are you living into your values at all? And one of those values is how you're created, which is restful. To be rested and rest with God. So it's so good. Agreed.
It's easy for us to prioritize, I think, certain things. It makes me think of like January, I was like, oh, I want to be better with like working out and eating better. And it's so crazy. Like when you prioritize, I'm like, oh, you're going to log all these calories for the day. You're going to pre-log your meals and stuff, because then you're going to follow it. You're going to prioritize exercise. And it's like, wow, well, we do these things for when it comes to that.
Yes.
But then when it comes to the Sabbath, we're so bad at it.
Yeah. Well, and it leans into that other piece too. Like we have good intentions, right? But you can't accidentally Sabbath well, right? Like you can't trip into it and go, oh, I Sabbath so well. There has to be intentionality about it. There has to be, it's got to be a priority. It's got to have that weight. And I, for me, one of the things that was a big mind shift. It's funny. A lot of people talk about, oh, it was a really convicting sermon. The only advantage I had is I'd been convicted for the 2 weeks prior up to it because I'd been writing it. But it really forced me to kind of change my perspective on how I budget my time and my calendar, which was a bit eye-opening for me as well. But we have to kind of treat it that way.
It's very good.
It's funny. When we if we think when we look at our calendar, we go like, oh, that night has nothing booked, so we go, it's free, it's open.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
like it's not.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's always something scheduled somewhere, and something's going to happen, and something's going to take. It's just whether or not you're going to put the good things in when you need to put the good things in. And so it's almost like this elusive lie that if the calendar's open, then I've Sabbath.
Yes, that's right.
But that is it's the intentional part of resting, and abiding. And I've always thought that, oh, that's free, and maybe we'll have a date night. Well, we never end up with the date night on that free night, because we don't schedule it and we don't plan for it. So
that's good.
I want to bounce off of that and say that I feel like we've shifted this time that we're living in, because previously, and I mean, we still have that issue, but previously, I feel personally like we've pastored people and ourselves. It's been a big thing if we struggle with money and managing our money and being good stewards of what we have. And I feel we're shifting into a place where actually we're very, very bad at being good stewards of our time.
Yeah.
And I've had many conversations with people who, either we can't serve because we're too busy. We can't go to church because we're too busy. We have to say yes to this because we need the money. You mentioned the control part of
Yes,
it,
that's
right? And you want to also provide. Or we just simply struggle to say no. So what I want to know is, how do we discern whether something is worth our time? Because we do get those like, you feel it's like Nate said, sometimes your week is actually something is open, and then
Boom,
there's can you do this, or you have to do this, or you have to be a part of. How do we discern what's important, what we should say no to? Is it good to say no?
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Well, you're the preacher.
I had a great conversation with a young man last night actually about this, and he's struggling to say no, so he does all these things, and he's almost burning out, and it's all good stuff. So he goes, it doesn't make sense. I shouldn't feel this way. It doesn't make sense. It's all so awesome, and I love it all. Why do I feel this way? And it just speaks to, like, you're not created to do all things, even when they're really good things. And so I think, the pendulum swings. We go from really selfish calendars that are just full of whatever we want, whenever we want, to full-on burnout type calendars that are just like, do all the things for all the people all the time. And you just go, man, Sabbathing is a posture of humility.
Yes.
And a calendar that reflects that would have, definitely other people built in, intentional time with your family built in, time with God built in. And so the mismanagement of time is just a mismanagement of like, think of God coming back and saying, well done, my good and faithful servant. I don't know. I don't think people are going to hear that too often, to go like, I gave you all this time, all these gifts, all this energy. This is what you did?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You worked?
Yeah.
That's all you did? Like, you didn't even work unto the Lord,
Yeah, that's right.
So,
That's good.
yeah, it's a real good question. But.
Yeah, it's a good point. Kind of jumping off that a little bit, that piece of we say yes to everything. Jay recommended a really good book that I'm just getting into now called You're Only Human. But it's kind of a perspective shift.
That's a good one.
Yeah, of acknowledging that God made us with limitations. It's not a weakness to have limitations. It's actually the way we're designed. And if I would actually say, like, to really start knowing what's the yes and no to, we first have to acknowledge that we do have limitations. Because if we don't, we're just going to say yes to all the good things, right? Because that's what Christians do. But that is just as dangerous as doing all the wrong things, because it does lead to burnout, which isn't honoring to God. And so for me, I think I almost have to back up a little bit and constantly remind myself, you do have limitations, and you need to slow down, and you need to know what's good and in the season and things like that. So that's the first piece, I think, for me, is to actually acknowledge limitations. But then the other piece of that too, I have to invite a lot of people into the discussion, because I'm not very good at discerning what I should do and shouldn't do.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Right? No, it's true, right? No, it's true. Because I do lean into that. Well, I can make that work.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's that mindset of, I don't need that much sleep. I can do it then. And that's not healthy, which we all know.
That mixed with your people-pleasing personality.
Right, 100%. Exactly. And so I have to rely heavily on people I trust to speak into that.
That's good.
As well as then also praying, and inviting people to pray with me, especially on the bigger things. The Lord, is this a good thing for now? Because my natural reaction is, we can do that. We'll make it work. Sure.
Yeah.
But there's consequences to that too that aren't necessarily good.
Yeah.
So those are kind of two pieces for me. I don't know, Toby, if you want to jump on that.
Yeah, I think for me, the hardest part with the saying no piece to thing is like, you always feel guilty, or that you're going to let someone down. That's always the hardest thing. Because like you said too, Nate, like, all these things are good. Like friends wanting to have you over every Friday, whatever it is, whenever your Sabbath day is, it's good. But at some point you have to go, okay, they're going to have to be a little disappointed. I'm going to have to disappoint them. Yeah. But do you want to disappoint men or God? That's just kind of where you have to end up. And I'm not good at this at all. I'm just I'm just winging it here. I think the other thing is to learn out of past experience as well. Because Lindy and I we've come to a point where someone wants us to go lead worship up north or whatever. Yeah. And then many times we'll say to each other, I just know when we get to that day, we're going to go, I do not want to do this. I hate the idea of just going, right? Yeah. And going, well, that's a good measure. Going, no, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, absolutely. You bring a really good point there. When you say yes to things, you're saying no to things as well.
Yeah,
And that's, I think, a cost we don't count a lot when we're
Right.
processing what to do.
very good.
Yeah.
And so maybe another good suggestion is, as you're wrestling, is this a good thing to do or not? Is list out like almost like a pros and cons, but kind of a yes and no. Like in saying yes to this, what am I saying
Yeah.
no to?
Yeah. It's
Right?
good.
Because we do tend to sacrifice the wrong things, I think.
Yes.
You know, I know, like in my situation as an example, a lot of times if I say yes to something, it means I'm saying no to my family. And so that's
Majority.
one that Tara has graciously walked with me, and she's very good about reminding me of. So yeah, that might be another suggestion as well.
That's good.
I'd recommend.
Yeah, I think for Toby and I, just like you said, sometimes it's not even. Sometimes I think we learned from it because we came from a background where if we didn't work, we didn't make money.
Right. Yeah.
And so for us, it was this craziness of just doing as much as you can, because if you don't get paid. And I loved when you mentioned in your sermon this part about control, because I need to be in control because I need to provide for my family. And I think that's where it started for us, where now we're at a point where we can actually say no to singing at a wedding, for instance, where we know we can make some nice extra money, which it's great. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think it becomes especially hard when there's actually a bonus involved, like there's finances or something involved.
Yep.
And
Pay off that pledge.
it's so easy. It's so easy to say that. Yeah, I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
But you know that the cost of this is going to be my family time, and I'm going to be extra frustrated. It's so interesting to me when Tovia and I we don't do our date nights, or we just don't spend intentional time with each other. I have this weird irritation, and it's like I don't even feel about you the way I need to feel about you, and I love you, but I know it's because we've neglected this part of it.
Yep.
And we're expecting everything to be the same, but we've neglected this part. And I feel like that's the same with our relationship with God. Like we start noticing small little things, and then we wonder like where, and then we go, oh, and that leads me to the next question, because you said when we don't Sabbath, idols start to sneak in.
Yeah.
You know, we want control, but to rest is kind of to renounce control. And I'm wondering if you could each share, you said that when we honor this commandment, it leads to blessing, or you will be forced into rest.
Yeah.
So do you guys maybe have a story to share with everyone, an example of when your obedience led to blessing, or can you share a time where you were actually forced into rest? Nate?
Oh, man.
Why don't you start us off?
Seeing as you're so rested.
Yeah, I'll probably have mostly bad examples.
Yeah, me too.
You're in good company there.
Yeah, I think a few years ago I was just sick. Everything was, and you guys remember that, it was a little bit scary. Like I wasn't healing properly. I had a bruise for like 3 months. They were worried about my blood count and whatever cancerous stuff and all of that. We had all these tests getting done. And my hair actually literally was like falling out a lot. It was a super scary time for me, and I was kind of going like, what's going on? And all the tests kept coming back, and they're fine. And I was like, oh, praise God. So I'm healthy but not healthy,
Yeah.
And I remember talking to my counselor one day, and he gave me the analogy that like I think I'm a certain type of racehorse, and I just want to run like crazy. But there's this other horse in me that's going like, that's not the pace I actually thrive at. And I'm going, shut up, you stupid horse. That's not me.
You
I
literally,
identify as this racehorse.
run
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah. And I identify as this horse that wants to go really, really fast. I don't identify as this horse that also wants to rest. And literally he goes like, you're just going to end up burnt out dragging the dead horse.
Yeah.
And killing and I'm like, oh man, I didn't. So he goes, because you're created to run fast. Yes. But Nate, you're also created to rest. And then he told me that Psalm 23 is actually like Chuck Norris roundhouse kicking me in the face, making me lie down. And he goes, I think you're being told to lie down, Nate. You're being told to lie down.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That's good insight, man.
So now I still work to not drag that dead horse. Stupid horse. Where is he?
We'll get to that.
I don't think that's what you were supposed to do. So, okay.
That wasn't the takeaway?
No, you interpret it as you want.
Anyways, that's a long one. Go ahead.
That's good.
I love it.
Yeah, I think mine is similar as to, I don't think it's been a long season, but there's been seasons where I just go without stop, literally working late into night or whatever. And then I'll just get crazy sick.
Yeah.
To a point where I'll sleep a whole day and then go, oh, hello world, like a reboot, you know?
It's very weird. One day, and the next day he is fine.
And yeah, it's God forcing you to stop, but it's also not a good rest, race, I will say. I think it's way better to actually plan the race, as we've been saying this whole time, than being forced to race. Because now you've spent a whole day sleeping and you haven't done any good rest.
Yeah.
Sure, you've caught up on your sleep and you feel better again, but I would there's no good time spent with God or good time spent with your family. Like nothing godly happened in this forced race, right. I'd say. So
yeah,
I think that's always a thing. Forced race, yeah, it's raced, but is it good raced?
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
Matt, do you have a story?
I have so many, but for the sake of time, I mean, I shared my testimony at the end of last year a little bit about the big burnout that we went through, mostly because of this. I didn't know how to rest well, and therefore couldn't gauge when things weren't good or right or whatever, and so that was devastating and almost destroyed our family. And so it's interesting what I've discovered since trying to put these rhythms into place. And I mentioned a little bit on Sunday, I'm getting to the point now where I can kind of set that day aside. It's the unto the Lord piece I'm wrestling with, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But one of the gauges now for me is to, not a gauge. One of the blessings that's coming out of that is I'm finding now that as I'm investing that day in being with God and slowing down, my horizontal relationships are way better. So my wife and I, as an example, when I am intentional about that Sabbath day, I find our relationship is just so much better across the board, which in turn, we are able to serve and love God as a family better. So it's really interesting. It's this, it almost feels paradoxical. I'm going to take time off, and in doing so, I actually become more efficient and better throughout the rest of the week. Right. And so that's been kind of the to speak to the blessing piece. That's been the blessing is as I've been intentional about that vertical relationship and obeying this command, which is still a process for me. I'm finding those horizontal relationships, starting with my spouse and then out to my kids and those types of things, have actually gotten way better. And it's been super encouraging. And so that's one of the reasons as I go through this, and people look at me funny, it's like, no, you need to schedule 24 hours off. I'm not just saying it simply because of the commands. There it is there, and we need to do it. But I'm going, no, this is my experience tells me that this is actually good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been my experience anyway recently.
Yeah, I think the thing I'll just share as well that I've just found if I Sabbath well and you actually spend time in God's word, that helps you be a better man in general. Yes. In that time, spending time in God's word, whatever it is, God is speaking to you, and I feel now I can actually be the priest of my house because I've gone to the well, kind of,
That's right, yeah.
And I have something I can share with Lindy, and even God putting his finger on stuff in my life, going, oh, fix this, or whatever it might be. And I think sometimes I think that's why God also wants us to, just sit still and listen for a little bit, kids.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get to have, what I love about that, what Toby just mentioned, is we get to have really cool conversations about God, and we actually get to connect in another level, which is amazing for me. And one thing I'll just mention is I wanted to add that to my sermon about idols is when I started laying down idols, it became almost really easy for me personally to lay down idols. It became it just became easier and easier because of starting to really trust God, right? Yeah. I'm not saying it's easy, but it was easier to be no, God, I've done this before. I will lay this down. If you need me to lay this down, even during our visa time, I was like, God, if New Hope Church is an idol for me because I love being here so much, and this is you saying you need to go somewhere else, please, Lord, please don't let it be this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I literally had a moment where I just go God, if you want me tomorrow somewhere else because that's what you want, I will lay this down. And I could say it because I truly, truly trust him. And I think with rest and Sabbath thing, I feel like with Toby, when we did it right, I feel like it becomes almost easier to get into this thought process or in this lifestyle of rest. We could rest well because you're sort of practice makes perfect in a sense. But that I want to go into this next question because this is also what I struggle with is how do we, you mentioned, the word observe the Sabbath. I'm not even going to try and remember what the other word was.
Shamer.
Thank you.
The fancy word.
Yes. That it's kind of it's work. And I'll kind of ask two questions in one, but to unpack this idea that work is work, but Sabbath can also be work. And also maybe just get practical, you can answer either of the two, but the question is, you mentioned, how do we invite God into it? I'm a very practical person. So
Yes.
I go, what does that look like? Is it watching Netflix? Because I think it's very soothing and I could just, lay on my couch and watch something with Tovi. What does that look like? Because I don't think it looks like that.
That's awesome. I'll jump into the practical side of that first. But one of the things that we just talked about this in our life group on Monday, actually unpack this a little more. One of the pieces in that's really important, and this comes out of Comer's book on Ruthless Elimination or Hurry. He talks about that litmus test, right?
Yeah, so
good. Is it restful and is it worship? I encouraged our life group, and myself included, to start writing down all the ways you connect with God. Mm-hmm. All right. PT calls it the menu of disciplines. And then, so I said, write all these down, and then on whatever day you block in your calendar for, this is my Sabbath day, put that in the notes section. So that like when you get to that day, you're now going to review these things and see how those work into the rhythms of that day.
That's good.
Because a couple of people in my life group that I love, because they're also very practical people. And they're like, so does that mean I can't garden? I can't, I love pressure washing. It's one of the most soothing things for me to do, So they get all this practical stuff, right? And they were looking for that list of things I can't do.
Yeah.
Right. Which is human nature. Well, where's the line?
Yes.
And my encouragement in that is more, stop looking for that line and instead go, what are the things that actually connect me with God? And then just prioritize those on that day of rest. And so the menu of discipline is just a really practical way to do that for sure. But I'd love for you guys to jump into this too.
It's really good.
So.
Yeah, I mean, what was restful one day might not be restful the next day too. So that's why I think the importance of the word and observe an intentional idea of going, okay, what am I about to do now that I can intentionally bring God into?
Yes.
And if that is playing football with my kids at the park and seeing the beauty of the park and the beauty of God's creation in my kids, then I'm going to bring God into this moment and thank Him for it and worship Him while I'm there and be a part of it. So and then the next week, kids are fighting like crazy. And like, this is not restful.
This is not from you guys. I rebuke these children.
You did not bring the Lord into this.
And I think that's the kind of beauty of it is when we start to get pharisaical and try to build defenses around it, we do rob it of the beauty of the Sabbath as well, which is to go and enjoy God's creation and enjoy God and just abide in Him. And
so good.
What do you think, Toby? What are your thoughts on this?
I think you guys said it well. My personal struggle is, and Lindy can tell you this is true. Like, even if we go on vacation, I don't want to plan.
Yeah,
because I go, I don't want to do anything. I just want to see where the day takes me. And that's kind of.
Are you even excited about this?
Yeah.
It's like, yes, because you're planning it.
Yes, I go. I plan stuff every day,
That's
and
right.
you know what? On vacation, I don't want to plan. Like, been on vacation with Nate too. You want to do this? Sure,
Whatever.
whatever. I'm very relaxed, Toby. And I think that's kind of my shortcoming is I don't plan things. Like you were saying, this menu thing is a great idea. Going, okay, now let's just just a bit of a what's the word? Like a blueprint to follow.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's very good insight.
Yeah, the other piece I'd speak to in that as well is everybody gets so intense about, I got to get it all figured out perfectly the first time and it's got to be right. And, and then one thing goes sideways, like your kids at the park are not understanding this thing of the park and those types of things, right? And we just throw it all out and say, it was all garbage. This was terrible. I failed miserably. And I would encourage, God gave us a lot of grace. I think we should give ourselves a little bit in this.
And this is training us to be intentional throughout the week.
That's right.
Yes.
Right?
Like it's not training us to, now I've nailed the Sabbath.
Yeah, that's
so good at it.
It's
I'm a Sabbath monster.
You honestly practice this and intentionally practice and work at it to teach yourself how to do that in all situations.
That's right.
So when I go into a meeting, I'm going like, all right, God, you went before me. I can't wait to see what you're doing here. And I'm excited to be a part of it. It changes your perspective. It's not like I've nailed the Sabbath. Now I can not spend time with God. No, you're learning to spend time with God so that God infuses everything.
You
that
got
we
it.
do.
100%. Yeah, it's like that quote, right, from the book that talks about those that Sabbath do all 7 days differently.
Yeah.
And that's the piece. And so this is a rhythm you have to work out and figure out and keep trying. Invite people into that. Ask people, what they think of this and that type of thing. Seek God in it, but don't get so hung up on the list of do's and don'ts that you miss the beauty of what are the things that draw me closer to God. I'm going to start trying those and see what works and what doesn't. And, because the reality is we got, a lot of families have young kids, and you're not going to get the same type of physical rest on a Sabbath, right? Because you've got little ones versus someone who doesn't. And so it has to go beyond that. It's that restorative piece, that soul restoration that comes from being with the Father.
So good.
So kind of a piece of that as well.
Love that. I think it's like, just like you said, just starting with a little bit. We shared this with our life group. If you say, I'm going to read my Bible 7 days a week and you fall short once, you go, oh my goodness, no, I didn't. And I was like, guys, if you have to start with one day, I'm serious. If you don't do it at all, if you have to start with one day and be intentional and say, oh wow, I can do this. 2 days, I can do this. Like, we sometimes we need to take that small step instead of setting these goals, like you said. That's really good. Thank you so much, gents, for all your input. This was amazing. I want to thank our listeners for tuning in each week. If you're brand new or you want to connect with us somehow about anything, please feel free to fill in the Connect card online. And we're going to see you again next week on Digging Deeper.